nav menu builder in Bricks used to be pretty inflexible, and the mobile menu builder kinda sucked. But you probably know Bricks 1.8 came with a whole new nav menu builder experience, and there was much rejoicing and naked dancing in the streets. No? And because now we have complete custom control to build any kind of nav menu we want. Yep, including whatever mobile menu design we want as well as multi-level drop-downs and mega menus. I've never seen anything like it in any page builder ever, which is great, until people actually try to use it. I've lost count of the number of times people have said to me, this is a bit intimidating, isn't it? But I've since spent a lot of time with this thing, and actually it's not that complicated at all once you understand what's going on, but it does have its little quirks that you really need to understand. I'm Dave Foy, and in this video I'm going to show you step by step how to build lovely nav menus with the new Bricks Nav Menu Builder. I'm going to break it all down and make it nice and easy for you. By the way, I do have another video explaining why you might still want to use the original nav menu element instead, not this shiny new one, because the original nav menu element also got a recent update, still totally valid, and it definitely has some big advantages over this new method, at least for certain situations. You can click this link here if you want to find out what that's all about. All right, let's get on with this. So in this video, I'm going to first introduce you to the 5 new nav elements. We'll build the basic menu, style it all up, and then set up and style the mobile menu. And there's going to be quite a few little bonus tips and tricks along the way. Now, if you want a PDF cheat sheet of all the steps that I follow in this video, luckily for you, I've made you one. So just hop over to davefoy.link/bricksnav and I'll fire it over to you. Heads up, I am going to cover building a pretty basic menu in this video. It's just going to have some links, a drop down, a call to action button, and also the mobile menu that goes with it. In fact, we'll be making this nav here. There aren't going to be any ultra advanced ninja menu moves in this one. Well, not many anyway. I figure this is already a lot to take in, so let's keep it simple. I will, however, touch on how to make multi-level menus and mega menus, and also how you would use the new off-canvas element to create your own completely custom mobile menu if you so wished. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where to look and how to go about these, but I'm not covering them step by step, because this video is going to be long enough as it is, and none of us have a great attention span these days, do we? So I'll cover mega menus and more advanced stuff in separate videos sometime. All right, before we start, quick bit of housekeeping and setup. So first I'm going to come into templates, and I'm going to edit my site header template here. I've already created it. And then in this header template settings, they're here, down into template settings, into populate content, and I'm going to set the home page to be the preview content while we're designing our nav menu. So under content type, I'll select a single post or a page, and then choose that page. That can be the home page. Apply the preview. So having the home page content here to see while we build the menu is going to be especially helpful later when we set styles for active links, as will become clear, hopefully. If I do my job properly, that is. Oh, by the way, if you find this helpful, hit that subscribe button and the little dingly bell below, because I'm back in the game and I have many more videos coming up. Okay, first let's meet the 5 new nav elements we have to play with. Now, the old way of building menus, I'll search nav. The old way of building a menu used just one element, this one, nav menu. I'll click to drop it into the structure. Let's come over to the structure panel. You can see here, it's simply one element and you set all of its settings and styling over here on the left. And as I said earlier, this original nav menu element is still totally valid, and it has some strong advantages over the new method I'll be showing you here. As I say, I have another video on all of that. I'll drop a link to it in the description. But the new way, well, let's quickly delete the old way first. Elements panel again. But the new way, well, everything starts with this new element here, nav nestable. It's under the general group. And alongside it are 3 other new nav building elements as well. We have drop down, off canvas, and toggle. And as well as these 4, there's also a new text link element as well. We're going to be using that as well. That's under the basic group. Now, one great reason to have all of these elements available separately is that we can use them even outside of nav menus. So you could drop separate text links wherever you like, which will be great for little call to action links maybe. You could create your own off-canvas slide-in panels with your own toggles to open and close the panel. Lots of flexibility. Anyway, that's you introduced to the 5 new nav building elements. Lucky you. All right, let's now get on with building the basic menu items. Everything starts with a new nav nestable element, so I'll click, pop it into place in the structure. You can't actually see this navigation at the moment because the default color of the links is pretty much the same as the dark colored background. We'll fix that soon, but the first thing that you'll notice already, this is very different to the previous nav menu. Rather than just one single element, it's actually got several elements nested inside it as a starting point, and it is this ability to nest other elements inside it that make this new nav element so powerful. Now, these are just some common elements given to us as a starting point, but you can put literally any bricks element you like in here. You know, if you wanted a little logo in the nav itself, or a search field, or a call to action button, you can drop anything in there that you like. In fact, this isn't a new concept in bricks. If I come back to the elements panel again quickly, I'm going to search nestable. You can see, as well as the new nav nestable element, bricks also has nestable accordions, nestable tabs, nestable sliders, again, so that you can have accordions, tabs, or sliders with literally anything you like inside them. You're not restricted by what the bricks devs have decided you can have. It's one of the many reasons bricks is so brilliant. Anyway, back to the new nav structure. As I say, this is all just a default starting point, and again, this can definitely seem intimidating. Bricks is trying to be helpful, but when you have no idea what all of this is about, it can also be a little bit mind-blowing. So for the purposes of this video, I'm actually just going to delete most of the default elements in here. Yep, delete them. Every single one of them. Crazy, I know, because bricks went to all that trouble to give us a starting point, but this is all going to be easier to understand if we just start from scratch and build it up step by step. The only element that you can't delete is this one. See? If you notice, it's a block and it's nested directly inside the nav nestable element. It's been labeled nav items by bricks in the structure. More on this block and how important it is very shortly. First, I just want to explain how nav nestable works. I'll select it here, come over to its settings on the left. So you can see the HTML tag for this element is nav, which if you know any basic HTML, it just means that it is the main top level nav element. And it is this bit that tells accessibility screen readers that this is the navigation. And here, inside this top level nav nestable element, you can style all the items at the top level of the menu, all your top level items all at once. We're going to do that soon. You can also style all the drop downs at once, which we'll also do soon, although you can override any styles that you set here at the top level on any individual drop down elements that you have in the structure. Again, you're going to see all of that soon. And also you can style the mobile menu here as well. Anyway, we're going to do all of that when we have some actual content in the menu. So back over to the structure. As I showed you, inside nav nestable is a block called nav items. And again, you can't actually delete it because it is a crucial part of the menu structure. You see, it's this block that forms the mobile menu as well. So with the nav items block selected, let's come over to its settings. You can see here it has an HTML tag of UL. That stands for unordered list. And again, if you know any basic HTML, you'll know that a list always starts with a UL tag. And then everything else nested inside it are the individual list items. If that means nothing to you, don't worry about it. Anyway, now we have the top level nav nestable element in place. We now need 4 basic links. Remember, that's home, about, blog, and contact. Services is a drop-down, which we'll sort out separately. So our first job is to add a text link. I'll come to the elements panel. Might as well just search text. Click on the text link, and over in the structure, let's just make sure that it's actually nested inside nav items. Everything inside the menu needs to be nested inside this block. I'm going to rename it nav link in the structure, purely for our reference, just a bit clearer the job it's doing. Then with this element selected, come over to its settings on the left. I'm going to rename it to home. Then we need to set where this links to. If the page didn't exist yet, which is totally fine, you'd select external URL and then put a hash symbol in the URL field, which is just the way that we set dummy URLs. However, this page does exist. I do have a home page, so I'm going to choose internal post or page and then select the home page from the list. We can skip these attribute fields here. I don't think we need an ARIA label for menu items like this, though correct me if I'm wrong. Rel isn't appropriate and title isn't necessary. Now, if I wanted an icon for this link, I could add one here as well, but I'm going to skip that, keep it simple. I need 3 more text links. I might as well duplicate this one again 3 times. So right click, duplicate, select the new one, come over to the left on its settings. This can be about. We have an about page on this site, so internal page and about. Let's make another one. Now you'll notice when I right click, Duplicate also has a keyboard shortcut, Command-Shift-D. That'll be Control-Shift-D on Windows. So with this element selected, I'm just going to Command-Shift-D, select it. Whiz over to the settings on the left again, change the text link. It's going to be blog. Choose the blog page. I have one of those as well. And Command-Shift-D again to duplicate this one over on the left. This can be contact. And I don't think I have a contact page so far. No, I don't. So I'm going to change this for now to external URL and leave the URL with the dummy hash symbol. Now, if you're wondering, hang on. I have to manage my links here, not in the WordPress menu manager. Yeah, that's right. With great power comes, well, the fact that you have to manage and edit your menu links here in Bricks, not in the WordPress menu manager. Well, there is a kind of workaround, sort of, that I go into in the other video that I mentioned, so let's keep going. Now the services drop down. So there's no prizes for guessing. We need to add a drop down element in here. So I'll come to the elements panel, search drop. I'll tab to it, hit the return key. That's a quicker way of adding it. Let's come down to the structure. Here it is. Oh, by the way, if you're keeping score, we've now used the nav nestable element, we've used the text link element, and we've used the drop down element. We've still got off canvas and toggle to go. I'm going to drag this into the right place. It wants to be here. With the drop down selected, let's come over to the settings. I'm going to change the text of the link to services, set the URL, internal post or page, and it's this one here. And with that set, let's come over to the structure panel and see what's going on with this new element. If I open it up, see the drop down comes with a div inside it for free. Bricks labels it content, and this is basically a wrapper for the content inside the drop down. So this div here actually forms the box for the drop down. It forms the box that's around the mega menu, and we'll look at all of that soon. But again, like the nav items block inside nav nestable, you're not able to delete this content block because it's pretty crucial. You'll see why it's so important later on. Let's just stick to adding some basic nav links in here as well. We already get 2 to start with, so I'll click on the first one, come over to its settings. The text for this first sublink can be plan. I don't have this page yet on this site, so I'll leave it at the dummy URL. And then the second link, change the text on that. This can be design. And then the third one, Command-Shift-D to duplicate it again, select it. And this one can be build. All right, so that is now the 4 top-level links all in place and a drop-down element as well. Now let's bang in that CTA button or call to action button. If you don't speak fluent acronym, I'm just going to grab a button from the elements panel, but let's use a keyboard shortcut to make that quicker as well. That's Command-Shift-E. That opens the elements panel, E for elements. Start typing, tab, hit return. And you can see here, because I had the drop-down element selected, silly me, it's dropped the button inside the drop-down. So I'm just going to drag that out into the top level of the structure. I'm not going to mess around styling this button because styling a button isn't the point of this lesson, but I will change the text. Let's go with click me. That'll do. And actually, I'm just going to drop the size down to small as well. I would normally use classes to globally style buttons, but I still have these sizes set up in theme style on this particular site, so that'll do for now. And then of course down here, I'd set where the button links to as well. So let's recap where we are. We can't currently see the menu items because they're currently practically the same color as the background. We'll fix that soon. But if we come to the structure, we've added a top-level nav nestable element. Inside that, we have the mandatory nav items wrapper. And inside that, we have our top-level links. Some of them are just text link elements. We've got one drop-down element and a button. So we've added our top-level items. Now let's get what we have so far styled up. By the way, if you're finding this helpful, do us a favor, give this video a thumbs up below. Very grateful to you. Now, I'm aware that we haven't used the final 2 new nav elements, the off canvas and toggle. I'm going to come back to those soon. I just think it's going to be easier to understand how these 2 work once we've done a bit of styling. Trust me. Well, don't trust me actually. But anyway, let's keep going. So when it comes to styling a menu with this new nav nestable thing, it's important to understand that you can actually set up and style every single one of these individual elements nested inside. So you can style each text link element individually. You can style the drop downs individually, but you don't want to do that if you can help it. At least not to start with. I mean, imagine if you had to separately style every single element individually to style your menu, it'd be massively inefficient and you'd probably lose your mind before you ever manage to finish the menu. So no, don't style these separately, at least not yet, unless you have to, maybe later. No, we always start right back up at the top in Nav Nestable. So we'll select that. I'll just close the structure down just so that we can see the menu more clearly. And then with Nav Nestable selected, you can see that here, over to its settings. And the idea is that we style as much as possible as we can here in the top level Nav Nestable element. Any styles we set here are going to trickle down to everything else inside it. And then, and only then, would you then style any of the individual nested elements with anything more specific, if you have to. So let's get on with some styling. We style all top level items in the nav, surprise, surprise, inside top level item. And before we do anything else, I'm going to set top level items to be white so that we can see them. So that's in typography and color, and I'll select white from my color palette. Better already. All right, back to the top. So gap, default 30 pixels. That's the gap between the menu items. This is fine, although I personally prefer to set spacing in rem, not pixels. So I'm going to go 1.5 rem. You can justify the content, start, center, end. I think in most menu use cases, you're not going to need these. Padding for each item could be really useful. You know, if you had a certain menu style where each link was like a box and you hover over it with a background color, then you'd need some padding inside each list item. But of course, ours is just a simple list here, so I'm going to ignore the padding as well. We don't need any background color for each menu item either. And typography, well, I've already set the color, but I would like text transform, uppercase links, and let's have font weight at 600. Much better already. Let's come out of typography. And while we're setting styles for these top level items, I'd like to set the hover styles as well. So I'd like these links to be yellow when I hover over them. You probably know how to set hover styles in bricks already, but if not, what you do is you come up to the states panel, that's here, top left, click into the field and put the site into hover mode. Yep, it's selected. And with this selected, it now means that everything that we set below will be for the hover state. So back into top level items, back into typography, and on hover, I like the color to be yellow. And because we're currently in hover mode, bricks actually shows us what the links are going to look like when we hover over them. That's actually all I need for hover. So I'm going to come back and click the X to clear the hover state. Let's give these links a test. Hover over them. Yeah, that looks cool. I like that. Okay, still styling the top level items. Let's now come down to the active panel. So here we have some controls for the active styles. And that means what do we want these links to look like when it's the current page we're on? You know, like if we're currently on the home page, what would we want this link to look like? Now I would like active links to be yellow, same as hover. And if you're wondering, yeah, when you're setting the active link styles for a menu, those settings are here in the element styles. They're actually not under the states pseudo class like hover was. See, we do have an active option here as well. Got to say, this is a bit confusing. At least it was to me. But anyway, just as long as you know that for your navigation, you set your active link styles in the element settings, not up in the pseudo class states panel. I want my active links to be yellow as well. So in typography and color, set that to be yellow. And here now you can see the home link showing as the active link. Why is home active? Well, that is because although I am actually editing the site header template here, remember in the template settings, I earlier set the homepage to be the preview content. So because we're previewing the homepage content, the menu thinks that we're on the homepage and is showing us the active styles for that page. All right, let's carry on editing our styles. So back into Nav Nestable again. Again, I'll just close the structure down. This is a bit easier to see. And now we come to styles for all drop-downs inside the navigation. See how when I click the drop-down panel here, the drop-down itself opens and closes on the screen. Yep, just look up to the top right. That's just so that you can actually see what you're styling. And it clearly needs some styling. Let's have a look. So we have some styling for the icon in drop-downs. That just means this down disclosure arrow. Then we have some styling for the content inside a drop-down, and also some styles for each item in the drop-down as well. Do remember that you can also select each individual drop-down element in the structure, and you can override there anything that we set here at the top level. But we just set as much as possible as we can here first. So first, the drop-down icon settings. This allows you to set some padding around the icon if you wanted to, which I don't. Gap sets the gap between the icon and the text. The default 10 pixels is fine with me, although I might change that to 0.5 rem, just to keep everything in rem, not pixels. You can change the position of the icon to the left or to the right. I prefer the right. That's all fine. The size of it is great as well. The transform settings. Now, transform in CSS means to change the shape or the position or the size or the orientation of something. And so here you can change the position of the icon when the dropdown is closed and also the position of the icon when the dropdown is open. Again, I'm happy with the defaults. Let me just say that if you wanted to change the actual icon itself, to something different than this little arrow, or you wanted to get even more fine-grained with icon styles, then you'd have to do that in the individual dropdown element in the structure. Anyway, let's carry on styling the top-level dropdowns into styling the content inside the dropdown. Most of these are self-explanatory, so I'm just going to focus on the ones I want to change. You can change the minimum width of the box. I think by default it's set to 200 pixels wide, and that's fine with me. Background color, let's go with our yellow. Then into typography next. The default text color is fine. I think this is currently just pulling in the body text color. I do want to go uppercase again. And font weight for dropdowns, let's go 500 this time. Back out of typography. Now, where were we up to? Oh yeah, here. Now we have some more transform controls. And because these are in the content section, these transform controls are to set the starting position and the open position of the actual box itself, the yellow box up here. So here's how it works. Transform here is the position that the box will start in before you click the drop down. So this is the position that the animation will start from, if you like. Transform open is the position that the box will end up at after you've opened the drop down. And then transition is basically the animation between these two. And so here you set how long it's going to take for the drop down to move from its starting position and where it'll end up when it's open, as well as the kind of animation. By default, it's set to ease in, but it'll be easier to understand if I just show you. So let's set a starting transform, and you can set all kinds of wacky transforms here, but all we really care about is this Y-axis, meaning up and down, because we want the drop-down box to animate up and down, I reckon. And I'm going to set the starting position here to 0. I think it's 0 by default anyway, but no harm in making it explicit. But that just means that the drop-down box is going to start opening from the actual drop-down top-level link. And then into transform open, let's try moving the box down, say, I don't know, just 10 pixels down from the 0 start position, just as a test. And then again, transition is just the animation between these 2 points. I'm just going to leave this as it is for now. May need to tweak it in a bit. Let's see what we have. So to open and close a drop-down while you're still editing the nav nestable element, the best way is just to come up here and click the drop-down settings panel. Yeah, open, closed, open, closed. So you see what's happening? Okay, so it kind of starts at 0 at the actual services link. And then if I open it, it animates down 10 pixels from there. Okay, how about we set the actual start position just a little bit further down? So I'll come back to transform. Here it is. Let's set that starting position to 4 instead. That means it'll just start a little bit further down. And then when it's open, let's try, say, 16, 17. Cool. Yep, I like that. Also, this animation was a bit quick for me. I think 0.2 seconds is a bit fast. I'm just going to type 0.5 seconds instead. This is basically shorthand for animate the whole thing between these two transforms for 0.5 seconds and make it an ease-in animation. If you don't specify the animation, it just makes it ease in, which is almost always what you want anyway, because it looks nice. Then to style each item in the dropdown, we have the ability to add padding around each item, background color, a border, and set the typography. Now we've already set the typography. We did that up in the content area here, so all I'm really concerned about here is the spacing. Here I'd like it to have a nice background color when we hover over the links. So I could come back over here into background and set that background color here to the dark BG, but I don't want to do that because this is for the normal state and I need this to be hover. So let's click the X to get rid of that. How do we edit the hover state of anything in bricks? Up in the states panel, correct. Click into hover. Editor is now in hover mode. Now we can come and set the background color. This now shows all the links with the dark background, which is fine because bricks is just showing us what these links will look like when hovered over. While we're in hover mode, let's also make the text white into typography. There we go. And this doesn't look bad, but this text needs a bit of breathing room. And for that, we're going to need a bit of padding. Now I'm first going to do this the wrong way, and there's a prize if you can spot it. Let's come back over to padding. I'm going to link opposite sides. Let's add padding to the sides, say 1 rem. Top and bottom, 1 rem as well. Oh, no, that's too much. How about half that? Yeah, that looks nice. Job done then. Yeah. All right, let's see. So I'm going to come out of hover mode again, give him a hover. So here's what happens when you do it the wrong way. You see, I only added the padding to the hover state. So the normal state is still all crushed up. And then there's this horrible jump when you hover. That's no good. I just wanted to show you the wrong way of doing this because it's a mistake I see people making quite often. Obviously, we want to set the padding in the normal state, so it's always there. So I'll first just quickly come back to hover, just so that I can remove that padding. We don't need it there now. Let's come back out of hover again, back to the normal state. Now we're back editing the normal view. Back into padding again, I'm going to link opposite sides. Let's go 1 rem again, and our 0.5 rem top and bottom. To me, that looks too big a gap when we're not hovering. You see, there's actually a 1 rem gap effectively between each of these. There's the half a rem from the bottom of this one, and then the half a rem at the top of this one. So let's come back to the padding. I'm going to knock that down to say half that size. Just give that a hover. Yeah, that's much better. Now, I just want to add a bit more padding to the top and bottom of this yellow box, the drop-down box, because when we're not hovering, the spacing looks a bit imbalanced. I'd actually prefer to have the same padding at the top and bottom of the box as there is the gap between the link items themselves. Where am I going to add this top and bottom padding? Well, it's not here in the item settings because that's the padding for each item. That's already set. Let's come back up. Well, we have styles for the content. Well, that's the content. It's not the box itself. Above that is styles for the icon, which we definitely don't want. So here's the first occasion where we're going to need to edit something more specific in the menu structure. So over to the structure, let's come down to the drop-down element. Remember, this top-level drop-down element is the link itself, services in our case. Then inside it, there's a div nested directly inside it, and it wraps all the rest of the drop-down content. Now we have some simple nav links in our case, but this could be a multi-level menu. It could even be the wrapper for a mega menu. If you set that on this drop-down, show you how to do that later. So it's this block element labeled content that is the drop-down box itself, the yellow box in our case. So let's add some padding to that. I'm going to shut the structure down one more time. Let's come over to style, into layout, into padding, link opposite sides again, and I'm just going to go with 0.5 rem, top and bottom. And right, that immediately looks a lot better. Let's give them a hover. And I think that looks pretty much damn near perfect. And we don't get that nasty jumping around effect because we set the padding on the normal state, not on the hover state. I would like to add just some little extras to this drop-down menu. If I recall, just come back to the structure, back to nav nestable, into the settings and down to drop-down. I'm pretty sure we've exhausted all the drop-down options in the nav nestable element. But remember, I did say that you can make further tweaks to each drop-down by editing the drop-down element itself. Let's check it out. So I'm going to select the drop-down element, shut this structure down. And in the settings for the individual drop-down, well, again, we have more icon settings. If you wanted to set a specific icon for this drop-down, this is where you do it. It's carrot that I'm interested in. No, not that. Let's set one up. So I'm going to set its size to be 0.5 rem. Okay, look up now. You can see what's happened. We need to set the color so that it can be the same color as our yellow drop-down box. And it looks a little bit weird just sat on the end here. So in position, I'm just going to shove it over 1 rem to the left. And then following that, well, you can set even more specific styles for the content inside this particular drop-down. You can set more specific active styles. Everything that you set here just overrides what you set for all drop-downs by default up in the nav nestable element. And then, although we're not covering these in this video because this one's long enough already, also in the settings for each individual drop-down, you can enable this drop-down to be a mega menu instead. Then you just build whatever layout you want inside this content wrapper, literally anything, a grid, several menus, anything that you want. And instead, I'll just unenable that. You could decide to make this drop-down a multi-level drop-down instead, and you do that here. And I'm going to do a video on these another time. Anyway, let's come back up to the top level nav nestable element one more time. And that's now all the top level items all styled up. Now let's finish off by styling the mobile menu. Don't forget, again, you don't have to remember all these steps. I've made a PDF cheat sheet for you to refer to. If you want to grab that, just go to davefoy.link/bricksnav and I'll fire it over to you. Here's how creating a mobile menu works. The default standard way, and the way we're going to do it in this video, is to set up all the styling in this mobile menu panel within the nav nestable element. It's pretty damn good and it is very configurable. And as I say, that's what we're going to be doing here. But if you wanted to create a completely custom mobile menu, totally custom design and contents, you can do that as well. In that case, you'd need to use the off-canvas element. And I'll briefly point you in the right direction of how to do that later on. So anyway, yeah, we're in Nav Nestable and we're styling the mobile menu here. Before I start styling anything, it first tells us where to put the toggle element in the structure panel to open and close the mobile menu. Now I'm going to skip putting the toggle element in the menu for now because I just want to focus on styling the menu itself. We can sort the toggle icons out afterwards, although it doesn't matter which order you do it in really. And anyway, Bricks usually puts the toggle elements in the menu by default, so you don't have to remember where they go. We're just doing this step by step from scratch, so it's ultra clear. So I'll select Keep Open While Styling. This keeps the menu open while styling, surprisingly, and it clearly needs some styling. We'll get onto that in a second. Our first job though is to decide which breakpoint our mobile menu is going to kick in. Now, it can be at any breakpoint that you like, and even always, so you would actually never see the desktop version of your menu. There is a lot that I could say about methods of how to choose the right mobile breakpoint, pros and cons of different approaches, but in this video, I just want to stick to the nuts and bolts of how the new nav menu builder works. So I'm going to set the mobile toggle to kick in at tablet size. And I'll also set the editor to tablet mode as well, so that we're setting menu styles at the same breakpoint. If I just close the mobile menu a second, you can see here now our desktop menu has disappeared completely, and when we have the menu toggle in place, that'll be here instead. We're going to add that very soon. For now, let's keep open while styling. First job, let's pop a background color. That's down here, and I'll choose this dark BG from the color palette. And how about we center align the links as well? Simple stuff, but already this isn't looking too bad. And you can now see that the default mobile menu is now full screen. Now, I like this full screen, but you don't have to have it like that. You could, for example, set a height. Let's go, say, 200 pixels. And as you can see, that extends the menu from the top of the screen. Obviously, a pixel value here is no good because you don't know how tall the menu needs to be to fit the content inside it. That's all right, though, because instead of a pixel value, you can instead type fit-content. And that makes the menu the precise height of the content inside it. Neat trick. It is the precise height though, which does look a bit crushed up, so I want to add some padding to the inside of the menu. Padding at the top, padding at the bottom. And I'll give another non-existent prize if you can figure out where to set this padding. If you've been paying attention, you would say that this is on the nav items block. And you'd be right, because that is the wrapper for the entire mobile menu. So into the structure, select nav items. Let's come over to style it, into layout and padding, link opposite sides. Let's try, say, 5 rem top and bottom. Maybe a touch too big. Let's go 4 rem. Close the structure so we can see that more clearly. And that does look pretty good. But I gotta say, I prefer mine full screen anyway, so I'm actually going to get rid of this padding, then come back into nav nestable, into the mobile settings. This is in content, down here. And I'm going to remove that height as well. What I would like though is for these links to be nearer the top rather than vertically centered. So down in the settings, let's justify the content to start instead. And that's cool. Except now we need that padding back at the top. So back to nav items, into the padding, link opposite sides again, and let's pop 4 rem. I'm going to go with 4 rem at the bottom as well, just for consistency. Now, the rest of the links all look pretty good to me. Test the drop down out, and that's not too bad. I have to say, I am not super keen on how this icon makes the services text look like it's off center with the rest of the links. I mean, the entire box for this item is centered, but the text looks a bit off because of the icon. I guess to fix that, you'd have to set the icon to be absolute positioned instead, which is a bit fiddly, and I'm not going to do that here. This is fine as it is. Anyway, that is the menu styled and ready. Let's check in the other responsive modes here. I can actually Command B or Control B to cycle through them. So mobile landscape, mobile portrait, and of course, if you wanted to, override any of the styles like the font sizes here, for example, like at mobile portrait, you might think these are a little bit too big. I think they're fine. Well, you'd have to come back and edit nav nestable again into the mobile settings. Here we go. Now you'll see that the mobile menu panel doesn't have any typography controls. So what you need to do there is, while you're in mobile portrait mode, come back to the top level items into typography, and then set whatever font size you want here to override what we set at tablet mode. Okay, so we have this menu and it's looking good. How do we open and close it? Well, that is with those toggles you've heard so much about. So let's get those sorted. Back in the mobile menu settings, I can now close this keep open while styling because the menu styling is done. Let's add our open toggle first, the one that will appear here. Now remember, it says here that we have to put the open and close toggle element after nav items in the structure. And remember again, Bricks usually does this for us anyway, but we're doing it from scratch. So I'm going to come up to the elements panel, search toggle, and then let's drag it into place. I'll open the structure, close nav items down. We've lost the toggle. Here we go. There he is back again. And so this toggle element wants to be after nav items, but still inside the nav nestable element. So let's drag that into place. Pop that there. So thinking about this logically, it's got to be inside nav nestable because it's the toggle to open and close this menu, but it's got to be outside of nav items. This is the wrapper for the menu, remember? Because if this toggle to open the menu was inside the menu, well, that's just not going to work, is it? And because this toggle is inside this menu, the toggle knows it opens and closes this menu. We don't have to make any special settings. Clever little toggle. I'm just going to rename it in the structure, just so it's clear what job it's doing. So the toggle is in place and we can't really see it at the moment. It is there, but it's the default color, which is about the same as the dark background. Now, before I set the style of the toggles, I am actually going to suggest back in nav nestable again, into mobile again, I'm going to suggest we temporarily set the breakpoint to always. The reason? Well, that is so that we'll see this toggle icon even at desktop mode. And I'm also going to style it in desktop mode as well. And the reason for that is so that later on, if we ever decide we actually want this toggle icon to always be there, even at desktop, then it's going to be all styled up and ready. Make sense? Because if I style this toggle while we're in tablet mode, well, the styles for it would only ever be for tablet size and downwards. Anyway, this is just a temporary setting. I'm going to put it back to tablet when we're done. Let's come over and select the toggle in the structure. Just close the structure. Let's check out its settings. I'm just going to quickly skip to the end, right to the bottom, and set the color to white, just so that we can see it. Okay, back up to the top of the toggle settings. You can set your own icon if you like, but I quite like the default that comes with Bricks, and it does have its advantages. You see, the default toggle icon isn't actually an icon. Crazy, I know. It is actually generated with HTML and CSS, and it's just a bit more lightweight for page speed performance. Moving down, we can ignore these toggle settings here. These are just for if you're using this toggle as the toggle for a separate off-canvas element. If you were constructing your own mobile menu design. We're not doing that in this video, so we can skip all this. And if you haven't set your own icon at the top, then here is where you would style the bars, as Bricks calls it. And currently this icon is a bit big and in your face for my delicate British sensibilities. So I'm going to make it a bit smaller. We change the size of the bars with the scale. The default is 1. Let's try 0.8, 0.7. I like that. And the height and the border radius of the bars, that means the rounded corners. I'm happy with these as they are. Command B to check that on tablet. And again, mobile landscape and mobile portrait. Yep, I like those. Looks nice and chunky and unmissable on smaller screens. Though if you wanted a different size on any of these responsive breakpoints, you go into that breakpoint and just make the changes there. So that is the toggle to open the menu. We also need to close the menu as well while the menu is open. So we need a close toggle inside the menu. So let's just go back to desktop mode again. I need to open the menu again. So into the structure, that's in nav nestable, into mobile menu, keep open while styling. For this, we need to be in tablet mode, of course, because that's where we set our mobile styles. And yeah, so we're going to need another toggle to close the menu somewhere inside this menu. The close toggle that Bricks give you by default lands here under all the rest of the links, but you can actually put it wherever you like. Search again. And this time, the close toggle is going to go inside nav items. Let's put it right down at the bottom. Yeah, here it is. I'm also going to rename this to toggle close mobile. Again, just for reference, so that our grateful future selves know what job this toggle is doing. And again, this close toggle is clever enough to know that it's supposed to close the mobile menu that it's inside. So there are no further settings required to make it close the menu. Let's close this structure down again. Now we could change the default hamburger icon to something different here. Let's do that. So into icon. I know that Font Awesome Regular has a nice X icon. This one here. Although, of course, you could, if you like, you could add your own SVG if you wanted to. Let's change its color. I'll change its color to white. Size needs to be way bigger. Start with 1 rem. Let's go up. I like 2 rem actually. And that is pretty much it for the close toggle. Great. Let's give all this a test. So to do that, I'm going to come out of having the mobile menu always open. So in nav nestable, into mobile menu again, and close open while styling. Okay, let's just test this in the Bricks editor to start off with. So into desktop mode. Remember we temporarily set show at breakpoint to always when we were styling the toggles. So that now needs to come back to tablet portrait. Okay, there's our desktop menu, into tablet, and mobile landscape, and portrait. That's great. Now we're going to need to preview this template to see it in action properly. So before that, I'm going to Command S to save the template. That's Control S on Windows. Into preview, Command P or Control P on Windows. I'm also going to have to view this on the front end, which is the only way to properly test the mobile menu. And to simulate responsive mode, I'm going to open the Google Chrome Inspector, right-click anywhere on the page, and choose Inspect. With that done, come over here on the left and choose the responsive viewer. I'm just going to drag this down to close it down a bit. And then to be able to expand and shrink the width of this screen, you just got to make sure that we have responsive set in this drop-down menu. And then we just drag the handles here on the right. So here we have desktop mode, and let's shrink that down to tablet. Boom, there we go. Yeah. Give the toggle a test. That opens the links, close, and that's looking pretty good to me. And as I say, if you wanted complete control over the entire design of the menu, you would bypass the standard mobile menu builder that we've used here, and you'd instead add an off-canvas element to your structure, and you'd put all your mobile menu design in that. That is beyond the scope of this video, but you can check out the documentation on it here on the Bricks site. I'll drop a link to these menu builder docs below the video as well, and I'll make another video on the off-canvas element soon. Now don't forget, if you want a cheat sheet with all of these steps laid out for you for reference, then just hop over to davefoy.link/bricksnav and I'll fire it over to you. And if you want to find out why you might still want to use the old nav menu builder in Bricks, then hop over to this video here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.